At 7 o'clock on Monday morning, the industrial district of Dagsboro greeted Detective Calvin Porter with the familiar smell of machine oil and metal dust. 20 years of police service had taught him that the most unpleasant calls come in the early hours of the morning, when most people are still asleep and the city is just beginning to wake up. The October air was cool and damp, and Porter turned up the collar of his jacket as he got out of his patrol car. The radio in the patrol car crackled with static as Porter parked near the yellow tape that had already been stretched around the vacant lot between two warehouse buildings. Sergeant Mills approached him, holding a notepad and a thermos of coffee. His usually calm face showed some concern, which was understandable. Murders in Dagsboro were rare, especially those involving young women. "What do we have, Mills?" Porter asked, taking a notebook and pen out of his pocket. "The body of a young woman, about 25 years old, discovered by loader Ted Branson at 6:30 in the morning on his way to work. Says there was nothing here last night. The guy's shaking. It's his first time seeing something like this." Porter nodded and headed for the spot where the body had been found. The technicians had already begun their work, photographing the scene from different angles. Coroner Dr. Hendricks bent over the body, making preliminary notes. The woman was lying on her back between the dumpsters, dressed in dark blue jeans and a white blouse that was torn in several places. Her long dark hair was scattered across the asphalt, partially covering her face. What was visible suggested that she had been a beautiful woman in life, but now her skin had taken on a characteristic pallor, and there was an abrasion on her left cheek. "Doctor, what can you tell us so far?" Porter asked, crouching down next to the body, but not encroaching on the work area. "Preliminary diagnosis: blunt force trauma to the head. See here, in the temporal region? A serious blow. Most likely this was the cause of death, but I'll say for sure after the autopsy. Time of death is estimated to be between 8 and 11 o'clock last night." Porter carefully examined the victim's clothing. The blouse looked expensive, the material was high quality with a designer label. The jeans were also not cheap, and the shoes, leather ankle boots with low heels, were clearly quite expensive. Her hands were well groomed, her nails neatly trimmed, her manicure fresh, the polish not chipped. This was definitely not a woman who lived in this neighborhood or had dealings with local drug dealers. "There are marks on her wrists," Dr. Hendricks noted, carefully lifting the victim's arm. "Looks like rope or tape. She was tied up for some time." "Any ID on her?" Porter asked, standing up and dusting off his knees. "None. Her pockets are empty and she has no purse. Looks like a robbery," Mills replied, flipping through his notes. "Although her jewelry is still there. Look, gold earrings and a gold chain around her neck." Porter frowned. Robbers usually took jewelry first. It was easy to sell and didn't require any documents. If someone killed the woman for money, why leave the gold? "See the wound on her head?" Porter pointed to a dark spot in her hair. "Most likely she was hit somewhere else, and the body was brought here after she died. It's too clean here." Forensic technician Jenkins had already photographed the scene from various angles, methodically circling the area. Porter waited until he had finished taking the main photos, then began to examine the area around the body. There were indeed no signs of a struggle here. No blood on the asphalt, no scattered belongings, no trampled ground. Even the trash lay in neat piles, as if no one had fought or resisted here. "Mills, interview the workers from the neighboring warehouses. Find out if anyone saw any suspicious people or cars last night. I'm particularly interested in the time between 7 and midnight." While the sergeant carried out his orders, Porter continued his examination. He slowly walked around the crime scene, carefully studying every square meter. Experience told him that killers, especially inexperienced ones, often leave clues near the body. 15 meters from where the victim was found, near the iron fence separating the vacant lot from the auto repair shop, something glinted in the morning light. Porter moved closer and saw a black leather women's wallet, half buried under a pile of old boards and rusty metal sheets. Porter put on latex gloves and carefully removed the purse. It was clearly expensive. Genuine leather, high-quality hardware, a well-known brand. Inside, he found a driver's license in the name of Sarah Mueller, a Toronto resident born on May 22, 2000. So she really was 25 years old. Credit cards in the same name, 2 Canadian and 1 American, apparently for travel. A little Canadian money, about $150, and a few American bills, and a business card-sized photo, the same woman hugging a dark-skinned man about her age in front of some kind of park. The man was smiling at the camera, holding the girl tightly by the shoulders. "Canadian," Porter muttered. "What were you doing here, Sarah? And why is your wallet lying in the bushes?" Apart from documents, money, and the photo, there was nothing else of significance in the wallet. No car keys, no notes with addresses, no plane tickets. This was unusual for a tourist visiting an unfamiliar city. People usually carried all their important information with them, especially if they were traveling alone. Porter photographed the contents of the wallet and called a technician to remove it. Then he returned to the body, where Dr. Hendricks was finishing his preliminary examination. "Doctor, what kind of objects could have caused such an injury?" "Something heavy with a sharp edge, a hammer, a crowbar, the edge of a step or a curb. The blow was strong, but not necessarily intentional. She could have fallen and hit her head. And then someone carried her here?" "Quite possibly. There are marks on her clothes that suggest the body was dragged across the ground. See the scuffs on the back of her blouse? And on her jeans, too." Mills returned 40 minutes later with the results of his interviews, and the disappointment was clear on his face. "Most people say they didn't see or hear anything. Most of the people here work the day shift and go home in the evening. But there is one lead. A cleaning lady from the building across the street says she saw a guy rummaging through the trash cans around 9 o'clock at night. Description? Dark-skinned, thin, wearing an old military jacket, about 30 years old, average height. He was staggering like he was drunk or high. At first, she wanted to chase him away, but then she changed her mind. There's nothing valuable in those bins anyway." "Anything else?" "The security guard at the Campbell factory also saw the vagrant, but later, around 11. He says the guy was walking toward the railroad tracks with some kind of bag in his hands." Porter knew that homeless people did sometimes show up in the industrial area, looking for something valuable among the factory waste. Old scrap metal, bottles for deposit, sometimes something more substantial that workers had carelessly thrown away. Most of them were relatively harmless people, just trying to survive, but among them were those who did not shy away from petty theft and sometimes more serious crimes. "Let's go to the nearby hangouts. We'll ask the local drug addicts and homeless people. Maybe someone knows this guy in the military jacket." They spent the next 2 hours driving around abandoned buildings, basements, and other places where people without a fixed abode usually gathered. In an old warehouse near the railroad tracks, they found a group of 3 people warming themselves by a fire made of trash, but none of them matched the description. In an underground passageway under the tracks, they found a woman in her 50s who was muttering something incoherent and was clearly under the influence of drugs. Finally, in an abandoned garage 3 blocks from the crime scene, they found what they were looking for. The garage had once belonged to a car repair shop, but had been empty for several years. The windows were boarded up, the roof was leaking, and the floor was littered with broken glass and trash. In the far corner, on a dirty mattress, a man was sleeping in the very same military jacket described by the cleaning lady. Next to him lay empty bottles of cheap wine, several syringes, and other paraphernalia of a drug addict's life. The air in the garage was stale and smelled of urine and decay. When Porter and Mills entered the garage, the man tried to stand up, but swayed and sat back down on the mattress. He was thin, about 30 years old, with unhealthy yellowish skin and inflamed eyes. There were scratch marks on his face, and his hands were shaking, signs of drug withdrawal. "Ronnie James, how's it going?" asked Mills, who obviously knew the man. "Detective Porter, Dagsboro Police. We want to talk to you, Ronnie." "I didn't do anything," Ronnie mumbled, rubbing his eyes with his dirty hands. "I was just sleeping. I didn't bother anyone." Porter looked around. Most of the garage was cluttered with junk. Old car parts, rusty tools, cardboard boxes with unknown contents. In the corner lay an old dark blue duffel bag, half open. Porter walked over and looked inside. Among the dirty clothes, tin cans, and other trash lay a cell phone in a bright pink case and a few bills. "What's this?" Porter took out the phone and showed it to Ronnie. The junkie's face turned even paler, and he began to lick his lips nervously. "I found it. I found it on the street. Honest." "Where exactly did you find it?" "I don't remember exactly. Somewhere yesterday, in the industrial zone. I thought maybe I could sell it and make some money for a fix." Porter turned on the phone. The battery was almost dead, but the device was still working. The lock screen showed a photo of the same woman who was now lying in the morgue. Sarah Mueller was smiling at the camera, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. In the upper right corner of the screen was a notification of missed calls, 17 from a contact named Tyler with a heart. "Ronnie, you're under arrest on suspicion of murder," Porter said, pulling out his handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court." "What? What murder? I didn't kill anyone!" Ronnie tried to stand up, but his legs wouldn't hold him, and he fell back onto the mattress. "I really did find the phone. I swear on my mother's life, I'm not a murderer." "Where exactly did you find it? Tell me the truth and tell me in detail." "There. In the industrial zone, near those big garbage containers. I was looking for bottles to return, maybe something else valuable. And the phone was just lying on the ground next to some kind of bag. I thought maybe I could sell it." "What bag?" Porter asked sharply. "A regular plastic bag from the supermarket. It had women's clothing in it, underwear. I didn't touch it, honestly. I just took the phone." Porter handcuffed him, despite his continued protests. The story was plausible. Drug addicts often rummaged through trash cans looking for something valuable. But the victim's phone in his hands was serious evidence, and there were no other suspects yet. In addition, the time Ronnie mentioned roughly coincided with the estimated time of death. While Mills led Ronnie to the car and read him his rights, Porter searched the garage more thoroughly. In the same bag where the phone was, he found a few more bills, Canadian dollars, exactly the same as in Sarah's wallet. And under the mattress, he found a woman's gold bracelet that wasn't on the victim's body but could have belonged to her. "Mills, make the arrest as required. I'll examine the victim's phone in more detail." Porter got into the car and began examining the contents of Sarah's cell phone. The list of recent calls did indeed show 17 missed calls to a number saved as Tyler with a heart. The latest messages were addressed to the same person. "I'm flying in tomorrow morning. Surprise?" Sent on Saturday at 9 p.m. "The plane has landed. I'm on my way to you. Sunday, 11:20 a.m. "Why aren't you answering? I'm already in town. Sunday, 2 p.m. "Where are you? I called your work. They said you left early. Sunday, 5:30 p.m. The last message was sent on Sunday at 18:00. "Tyler, where are you? I'm at your house, but you're not here. Your neighbor said you were home. Why aren't you answering? Call me back immediately." After that, there were only incoming calls, but no one answered. The last call was made at 8:05 p.m. In Porter's phone contacts, he found a complete entry. Tyler Reed, with a local operator number and an address on Oak Street, 23. Judging by their correspondence over the past few months, they had been dating for over a year, and the relationship seemed serious. Sarah often wrote about her plans to visit him. He replied with romantic messages, and they discussed their future together. "Mills, take James to the station and fill out all the paperwork. Question him again. Get him to remember all the details about where and when he found the phone. I'll go to this Tyler Reed's place. Do you think the guy knows what's going on?" "We'll see. Maybe he knows what she was doing here and why she was alone in the industrial zone at night. Maybe he knows more." Porter got in his car and drove to Oak Street. On the way, he thought about the details of the case. Sarah had obviously come to see the guy unannounced, wanting to surprise him. But something had gone wrong. Maybe they had argued, and she had gone out alone to walk around the city, unaware that the industrial area could be dangerous after dark. Or maybe this Tyler was somehow connected to her death. Phone records showed that after 6 p.m. on Sunday, Tyler did not answer any of the girls' calls. Either he really didn't hear the phone or see the messages, or for some reason he deliberately avoided talking to her. And that led to certain conclusions. Number 23. Oak Street turned out to be a small, single-story building with a neat lawn and an old gray Honda in the driveway. Porter parked at the curb and carefully surveyed the neighborhood. It was a quiet, residential area with similar houses on both sides of the street. Most of the buildings looked well-maintained, with small gardens in front of the entrance and mailboxes on posts. It was around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and the street seemed deserted. All the adults were at work, the children at school. Porter walked up to the front door and rang the bell. He heard footsteps inside the house, then the sound of a lock being opened. The door opened just wide enough for a chain, and the face of a young black man appeared in the crack. "Yes?" "Tyler Reed? Detective Porter, Dagsboro Police. I'd like to talk to you." The face in the doorway paled noticeably, and the man was silent for a few seconds, as if considering something. "Ah, what's this about?" "About Sarah Muller. Can I come in?" Tyler removed the chain and opened the door completely. He was about the same age as in the photo from Sarah's wallet, of medium height and strong build. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt with the logo of some tech company. His hair was cut short, and he had 3 days' stubble on his face. But what struck Porter most was his gaze, nervous, darting, like someone who had been caught off guard. "Come in," Tyler muttered, stepping aside. Porter entered a small hallway. The house was clean, but not particularly cozy. In the living room stood an old leather sofa, opposite it a large TV, a coffee table with remote controls, and several empty beer bottles. There were several photos hanging on the walls. Tyler with friends on a fishing trip, a group photo from some corporate event. But Porter didn't notice any photos with Sarah, which seemed strange to him for a guy who had been dating her for over a year. "Have a seat," Tyler said, pointing to the sofa. "Would you like some coffee or water?" "No, thank you." "Mr. Reed, when was the last time you saw Sarah Muller?" Tyler sat down in a chair across from the sofa, nervously rubbing his hands on his knees. What happened to her? Is she okay? Please answer my question." "When was the last time you saw her?" Sunday, she came to my house." "What time?" Around 2 in the afternoon, I think. Maybe a little later." Porter took out a notebook and began to write. "Did she warn you she was coming?" "No, it was a surprise. She wanted to surprise me." Tyler tried to smile, but it came out forced. Sarah was so spontaneous. The use of the past tense did not escape the detective's attention. "What happened next?" "Well, we talked. She told me about her trip, about work. I showed her photos of what had changed here since her last visit." "And how long did she stay with you?" Tyler paused, clearly choosing his words. "Not very long. We had an argument." "About what?" "Something silly. She was upset that I hadn't answered her calls in the last few days. I'd been working a lot, tired. I just wanted to relax at home, and she showed up unannounced." Porter wrote down the explanation, but his intuition told him that Tyler wasn't telling the whole truth. "What time did she leave?" Around 5 in the evening, maybe 5:30. "And you didn't see her out?" "No." She was angry and said she would find her own way to the hotel. She slammed the door and left. "Which hotel was she going to?" I don't know. She didn't say." Porter looked up from his notebook. "That's strange. A girl comes to you from another country, and you're not interested in where she's going to stay." "Well, I thought she would stay with me. It had always been that way before. And when we had a fight, I didn't think to ask." "Mr. Reed, I have Sarah's phone number. According to the records, she tried to call you 17 times after 6 in the evening. Why didn't you answer? Tyler turned pale again and began nervously twisting the hem of his t-shirt. I was at work. I was working overtime and left my phone in the car. How late did you work? Late. Until 11, I think. Can your colleagues confirm that? Of course. I work as a technician at the Campbell factory. There are cameras and entry and exit logs. Porter nodded, mentally noting that he would need to verify this alibi. Show me photos of your relationship with Sarah. What photos? You dated for over a year. Surely you have photos of the two of you together. Tyler stood up and walked over to the dresser in the corner of the room. He opened the top drawer and took out several printed photos. He handed them to Porter with the look of someone who was in pain. The photos did indeed show Tyler and Sarah in various places, at a restaurant, on the beach, at an amusement park. Sarah looked happy, smiling and hugging Tyler. He was smiling too, but somehow less naturally, as if he were posing for the camera. The photos were dated. The oldest was 8 months ago, the newest 3 months ago. Why aren't there any more recent photos? Porter asked. We haven't seen each other much lately. She lives in Canada and works a lot, and I'm busy too. But you corresponded regularly? Yes, of course. Almost every day. Porter studied Tyler's face closely as he spoke. The guy was clearly nervous, sweating despite the cool weather. His eyes darted around constantly, unable to look the detective directly in the face. Mr. Reed, Sarah is dead. Tyler raised his head sharply, his face reflecting what could have been either genuine shock or well-acted surprise. What? Her body was found this morning in an industrial area. She was murdered. That's impossible. When? How? Last night between 8 and 11? Tyler sank into a chair and covered his face with his hands. Oh my God. Poor Sarah. Who could have done this? That's what we're trying to find out. That's why I need the whole truth about your meeting yesterday. I told the truth. We had an argument and she left angry. I thought she would go back to Toronto, as she usually did when we argued. Usually? So you argued often? Not often. Sometimes. All couples have disagreements. Porter stood up and walked around the room, carefully examining the surroundings. On the coffee table were magazines about cars and fishing, TV remotes, and a phone charger. Next to the sofa was a small table with a lamp, and on it was an ashtray with several cigarette butts. Do you smoke, Mr. Reed? Sometimes. Why? Did Sarah smoke? No, she couldn't stand the smell of tobacco. She always asked me not to smoke around her. So you smoked at home yesterday after she left? Probably. I don't remember exactly. Porter walked over to the window and looked out into the yard. There was a small shed, an old lawnmower, and a barbecue table. Nothing suspicious, but the detective noticed that the grass near the shed looked trampled, as if something heavy had recently been lying there or some kind of activity had taken place. Mr. Reed, can I take a look at your backyard? Why? Routine procedure in a murder investigation. Tyler reluctantly led him through the kitchen to the back door. The kitchen was small but clean. There were dirty dishes on the table, 2 plates, 2 glasses, cutlery. Porter made a mental note of this. Did you have dinner at home last night? Yes, no. I ate at the cafeteria at work. Where did these dishes come from? Tyler looked at the table, and Porter noticed the muscles in his neck, tense. They're from lunch. When Sarah was here, we ate sandwiches. I see. They went out into the yard. Porter walked over to the spot where the grass had been trampled. What happened here? Nothing special. I was rearranging the garden furniture last weekend. The detective crouched down and examined the ground closely. There were marks in the soft soil from something heavy, but not from table or chair legs. It looked more like a large bag or something similar had been lying there. Mr. Reed, you said you worked until 11 last night? Yes. And your car was with you at the factory? Of course. How else could I get to work? So your car was at the factory all evening after 5:30? Yes. Why? Just checking the details. Porter took another careful look around the yard, then returned to the house. In the living room, he studied the photos of Tyler and Sarah again. Tell me, how did Sarah get to your house yesterday? By taxi? Probably. Or by bus. I didn't ask. Where are her things? Her bag? Her suitcase? Tyler froze. What things? She came from Canada. She must have had luggage. Oh, yes, there was a bag, a small one. She took it with her when she left. What was in it? I don't know. Women's things, probably. Porter closed his notebook and stood up. Mr. Reed, tomorrow morning I'll check your alibi at the factory. If it turns out that you lied, we'll have to meet again. In the meantime, don't leave town without notifying the police. Of course, I understand. And detective, find the person who killed Sarah, please. She was a good girl. She didn't deserve this. This time, Tyler looked him straight in the eye, and there was genuine pain in his voice. But Porter had been a detective long enough to know that people can be surprisingly convincing, especially when their freedom is at stake. Porter left the house and got into his car. As he wrote down his observations, a picture formed in his mind that he didn't like. There were too many inconsistencies in Tyler's story, too much nervousness for someone who had simply lost his girlfriend. Particularly alarming was the fact that he had not answered any of Sarah's 17 calls and then conveniently happened to be at work at the exact time she was killed. The detective started his car and drove toward the Campbell factory. Tomorrow morning he would check Tyler's alibi, but he was already almost certain that he would find holes in it. In the meantime, he needed to talk to Ronnie James again. Perhaps the drug addict would remember some details that would help piece together the picture of the crime. On the way, Porter thought about how there were too many questions and too few answers in the Sarah Muller murder case, but experience told him that the truth was usually closer than it seemed at first glance. And more often than not, the killers were those closest to the victim. Campbell's factory was located in the industrial sector of Dagsboro, a 20-minute drive from Tyler Reed's house. It was a large industrial equipment manufacturing enterprise that occupied several blocks and employed nearly 1,000 people. Tall smokestacks, warehouse hangars, and administrative buildings gave the impression of a serious manufacturing operation that had been running smoothly for decades. Porter arrived there on Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. when the day shift began. There was a line of workers with passes at the gate, many smoking their last cigarettes before the start of the workday. The security guard at the checkpoint checked the detective's ID and escorted him to the administrative building, explaining where to find the person he was looking for. The building's corridors were painted a dull gray and smelled of machine oil and metal. Safety posters and honor boards with photos of the best workers hung on the walls. The porter found the technical department manager's office on the 3rd floor. Robert Clark turned out to be a man in his 50s, with gray temples and the tired expression of someone who had spent many years managing subordinates and solving their problems. On his desk were stacks of documents, folders with reports, and several cups with coffee leftovers. Mr. Clark, I need information about the working hours of one of your technicians, Tyler Reed. Tyler? Clark put down his pen and looked closely at the detective. What's going on? Is he in trouble? Routine check in connection with an investigation. Can you tell me what time he worked last Sunday? Clark frowned and opened the folder with the timesheets, flipping through a few pages. Sunday? But Sunday is our day off. The factory is closed, except for emergencies and maintenance of critical equipment. Porter felt a sickening knot in his stomach. Tyler's lie was becoming obvious. So Tyler Reed definitely wasn't at the factory on Sunday? Absolutely. The last time he worked was on Friday, his usual shift from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. On Monday, he came in as usual at 8 a.m. What about overtime? Maybe some kind of emergency repairs? No, nothing like that. And even if there had been, I would have known about it. All overtime goes through me. I make the schedule and approve the pay. Is Tyler a good worker? Reliable? Generally speaking, yes. He's efficient and knows his job. True, he's been a bit distracted lately, gets sidetracked often, but there haven't been any serious violations. Can you show me the access control system, cards, cameras? Of course, come this way. Clark led Porter to the head of security, an elderly man named Edwards, who had served in the Army for 20 years before moving into civilian security. His office was lined with monitors showing various areas of the plant. Mr. Edwards, please show me the surveillance camera recordings from last Sunday. Certainly. Edwards turned on the computer and began reviewing the archives. Sunday is a fairly quiet day. Only the guards make their rounds every 2 hours. Images from different cameras flashed across the screen. Empty corridors, deserted workshops, a parking lot with a few security cars. Throughout the day, only uniformed security guards appeared on the factory premises, making their scheduled rounds. None of the technical staff were on the recordings. Does Mr. Reed use an electronic access card? Yes, like all employees. We have strict entry and exit controls. Edwards opened another program on the computer. The last time his card was used was on Friday at 5:05 p.m. when he left the premises. And on Saturday, on Monday? Saturday is a day off, so the card wasn't used. On Monday, he entered at 7:58 and left at 5:07 p.m., his usual schedule. Porter requested a printout of all of Tyler's entries and exits for the past week. The picture was crystal clear. Tyler had not been at the factory on Sunday, which meant he had lied about where he had spent the evening when Sarah was killed. And it wasn't just a minor inaccuracy, but a deliberate lie designed to provide him with an alibi. Leaving the factory, Porter drove to the police station for a more detailed interrogation of Ronnie James. In the holding cell, the drug addict looked even worse than the day before. His withdrawal symptoms were getting worse by the hour. His hands were shaking more and more. His face was covered in cold sweat, and his eyes were red and watery. He sat on the bunk, his head in his hands, moaning softly. "Ronnie, how are you?" Porter asked, entering the cell with Sergeant Mills. "Bad, Detective. Very bad. Can I have a doctor? Or at least something for the pain? Methadone? Anything else?" "Let's talk first. If you cooperate, we'll see what we can do. Tell me again in detail how you found the phone." "I told you. I was looking for bottles in the industrial zone near the big dumpsters. The phone was lying on the ground, not far from the bag." "What else was there? You mentioned a bag with clothes in it." Ronnie raised his head, and something like fear flashed in his inflamed eyes. "Yes, there was a bag. A white plastic one from the Food Lion supermarket. It was tied at the top. There were women's clothes in it, clean ones." "What kind of clothes? Try to remember in more detail." "I don't remember exactly. There was definitely underwear, a white bra, panties, and something else. A blouse, I think. It all looked expensive, not like the kind of thing people usually throw away." "Did you take anything from the bag?" "No. I only took the phone that was lying nearby. I don't need clothes. I'm not a woman." "Ronnie, did you see a car nearby, or people?" The drug addict thought again, massaging his temples with trembling hands. "A car? Yes, there was a car. Gray, small. Honda or Toyota, I'm not sure. It was parked about 50 meters from the dumpsters, by the fence. And people? There was one person, a man, black, like you and me. He threw something into the dumpster, then took something else out of the trunk and threw that in too. Then he got in the car and drove away." "What did he look like? Try to remember the details." "An ordinary guy. Average height, not fat, not thin. He was dressed normally, not like a homeless person. He was wearing a dark jacket or shirt. I couldn't really see his face. It was far away and dark." "Do you remember the time more precisely?" "It was already dark, but not very late. Around 9, maybe 9:30. I remember because I thought it was too early to go home. Maybe I'd find something else." Did this man seem nervous? Was he in a hurry? Yes, he seemed to be in a hurry. He did everything quickly, looking around. Then he drove off abruptly. The tires even squealed a little. Porter carefully noted these details. Ronnie's testimony was becoming more and more specific and convincing, and it coincided with the estimated time of the murder. The gray Honda Civic was parked outside Tyler Reed's house, and that could no longer be a mere coincidence. Ronnie, could this man be the same person whose photo was on the phone? I don't know, Detective. I only saw the photo briefly when I turned on the phone, and I couldn't really make out the man's face. Did you remember the license plate number? No, I didn't see it. The car was parked sideways to me, so I couldn't see the number. Okay, Ronnie, if you remember any more details, be sure to tell the guards. They'll pass it on to me. Porter left the camera room and headed for his desk. The picture was becoming clearer, but more compelling evidence was needed. It was possible to get a search warrant for Tyler Reed's house, but first it was worth trying one more conversation. Perhaps faced with the fact that his lies had been exposed, and with evidence of his presence at the scene where the evidence had been disposed of, the suspect would confess to the crime himself. Porter studied the case files again, analyzed the timeline of events, and drew up a plan of further action. Everything pointed to Tyler Reed's involvement in Sarah Mueller's death, but questions remained about the motive and the specific circumstances of the murder. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Porter returned to Oak Street. This time, he was not alone. He was accompanied by Sergeant Mills, who could be needed if Tyler tried to escape or resist arrest. Both officers had handcuffs and service weapons, although Porter hoped that it would not come to the use of force. Tyler's car was in the same place as yesterday, but there was no answer to the doorbell for a long time. Porter rang several times, knocked on the door, and shouted that it was the police. Finally, shuffling footsteps could be heard, and the door opened just wide enough for the chain. Mr. Reed, we need to talk again. About what? I told you everything yesterday. Not everything. Please open the door. Tyler removed the chain and opened the door completely. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and swollen, his clothes were wrinkled and dirty, and he smelled of sweat, alcohol, and fear. His hair was tousled, and he had 2 days' worth of stubble on his chin. His hands trembled as he stepped aside to let the police officers in. Come in, he muttered. The living room was a complete mess. There was a half-empty bottle of cheap whiskey on the coffee table, cigarette butts were scattered nearby, and ashes were strewn across the surface. Clothes were strewn across the armchairs and sofa, and newspapers and magazines lay on the floor. The air was stale and sour. Have a seat, Mr. Reed. Porter pointed to the sofa, removing a discarded shirt from it. Tyler sank heavily into the chair and buried his head in his hands. Tyler, I checked your alibi. So? His voice was hoarse, barely audible. Campbell's factory is closed on Sundays. The security cameras did not record your presence there on Sunday evening. Your electronic access card was not used from Friday evening until Monday morning. Tyler's face turned ashen. I may have mixed up the days. I worked late on Saturday, not Sunday, or Friday. No, you didn't. Your last check-in at the factory was on Friday at 5:05 p.m. Everything is confirmed by documents and video recordings. Then I don't remember exactly where I was on Sunday evening. Maybe I was just sitting at home drinking beer. Tyler, I have a witness who saw a man near the dumpsters in the industrial park on Sunday around 9 p.m. The man threw something into the dumpsters and got into a gray Honda. You have a gray Honda Civic. Tyler was silent, staring at the floor. His fingers clenched and unclenched nervously. My witness also found Sarah's phone and a bag of women's clothing there. Expensive, clean clothes. Would you like to explain how those things got there? I don't know. I have no idea. Tyler, lying only makes your situation worse. If it was an accident, if you didn't plan the murder, it's better to tell the truth now. Maybe we can find a way to help you, to mitigate the charges. There was a long pause, Tyler took several deep breaths and rubbed his face with trembling hands. The only sounds in the room were the ticking of an old clock on the wall and the distant noise of cars on the street. If I tell the truth, will you help me? It really was an accident. Tell us what happened and then we'll decide. Okay. Tyler raised his head and looked the detective in the eye for the first time during their conversation. But it really was an accident. I didn't mean to kill her. I swear. Porter took out a tape recorder and turned on the recording. Tell me everything in order, from the very beginning. Sarah did come on Sunday afternoon, but I wasn't alone. I had, another woman. Deborah Crow. She works as a bartender at the Blue Smoke Club downtown. Were you cheating on Sarah? Yes, for several months. Sarah lives in Canada. We rarely saw each other. Deborah is here, nearby. It started as just fun, but then... Continue. What happened when Sarah arrived? When she rang the doorbell, I completely panicked. Deborah had been with me since Saturday. We spent the weekend together. I asked her to quickly hide in the bedroom upstairs and gather her things. I thought Sarah would stay for a while. We would talk, and then she would leave. After all, we had been arguing a lot lately, and our relationship was really coming to an end. What happened next? Sarah was very upset and angry. She said that I wasn't answering her calls or texts and that I was acting strangely. We started arguing. She accused me of growing cold toward her, of having someone else. How long did that go on? 40 minutes, maybe an hour. Then Sarah said she wanted to freshen up, take a shower. She headed for the stairs to go up to the bathroom. I tried to stop her, saying that the shower wasn't working, that it would flood the neighbors, but she didn't listen. Tyler fell silent, staring into space. What happened upstairs? She saw Deborah in the bedroom. Deborah tried to hide in the closet, but she didn't make it in time. A terrible scene ensued. Sarah screamed, calling me a scumbag and Deborah a whore. Deborah started screaming too, defending herself. Where were you? I went upstairs after them, trying to calm everyone down, but it was too late. Sarah lunged at Deborah, trying to hit her. Deborah pushed her away. They grabbed each other and fought. What happened next? Deborah is stronger. She pushed Sarah very hard. Sarah flew backwards towards the stairs. She lost her balance on the top step and fell head first. I heard her hit the stone floor in the hallway. The sound was horrible. Did she die right away? No, not right away. She was unconscious, breathing very heavily, wheezing. Blood was coming out of her mouth. We realized that the injury was serious. And what did you do? I wanted to call an ambulance. I was already dialing the number, but Deborah stopped me. What did she say? That if the ambulance and the police came, we'd both be arrested for murder. That no one would believe it was an accident. That I had a motive. I was cheating on Sarah and Deborah was my mistress who killed her rival. And you listened to her? I was in shock. I couldn't think straight. Deborah took charge and said she knew what to do. What exactly did she suggest? To wait until dark, and then make it look like a robbery somewhere else. She said she had experience, that she knew how to fool the police. What experience? I don't know exactly. She hinted that she had been in trouble before, but always managed to get out of it. What did you do while you waited for darkness? We watched Sarah. She died 2 hours later, stopped breathing. Deborah checked her pulse and said it was over. And then? Deborah made me help her. We wrapped the body in an old blanket and waited until it was completely dark. Then we put it in the trunk of my car. Deborah said the industrial area was the perfect place, dark and deserted at night. Why did you change her clothes? Deborah said there might be our hair, skin particles, DNA on the clothes, that we needed to change Sarah into clean clothes from her own bag and throw the dirty ones away separately. Did you take off her jewelry too? Deborah took off her bracelet and watch and said she would keep them and sell them later. The rest was left on to make it look plausible. Burglars don't always take everything. Where is Deborah Crow now? I don't know. She left my place late at night, around 2. She said I should act normal, not draw attention to myself, that we were almost strangers, if anyone asked. Porter turned off the recorder and took out his handcuffs. Tyler Reed, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Sarah Mueller, concealment of a crime, and obstruction of justice. Wait, what about Deborah? It was her idea. She was in charge. She made me help her. We'll find her too, but for now you'll have to answer for your actions. Mills handcuffed Tyler, who no longer resisted. He looked completely devastated, like a man who had nothing left to lose and nothing left to lie about. Mills, take him to the station and process the arrest according to the rules. I'll go look for this Deborah Crow. The Blue Smoke Club was located in the city center, in the basement of an old 3-story building. Even during the daytime, muffled music could be heard coming from inside, and the neon sign flashed pink and blue, attracting the attention of passers-by. Porter descended the narrow staircase and found himself in a dimly lit room with a long bar, several round tables, and a small stage for performances. Behind the bar stood a young, dark-skinned woman of about 23, wiping glasses and arranging bottles. She was beautiful, with long hair and bright makeup, but when she saw Porter in uniform, she smiled nervously and froze with a towel in her hands. Sorry, we're not open yet. We don't open until 6 in the evening. Deborah Crow? Detective Porter, Dagsboro Police Department. The glass fell from her hands and shattered on the floor with a loud crack. What happened? Her voice trembled. I think you know exactly what happened. Tyler Reed told me everything. In detail. Deborah slowly sank into a high chair behind the bar and covered her face with her hands. She was silent for a few seconds, then raised her head. It was an accident. We really didn't mean to kill her. Maybe. But concealing a murder is a deliberate crime, Miss Crow. We were scared. We thought no one would believe us, that everyone would decide I killed her out of jealousy. Isn't that what happened? No, she attacked me first. I was just defending myself. Porter arrested Deborah as well, reading her rights. Both suspects were taken to the station, where they gave detailed statements over the course of several hours. The stories they told independently of each other were largely consistent. Sarah had indeed died as a result of an accident during the fight, but the attempt to cover up what had happened turned the tragedy into a serious crime. The next day, Porter returned to Ronnie James's holding cell. The drug addict was lying on his bunk, covered with a thin blanket. His withdrawal symptoms had peaked, but the worst was over. Ronnie, I have good news. We found the real culprits in the woman's death. You're free. Really? The drug addict's eyes glistened with faint hope. So I can really leave here? Yes, but first you need medical attention. I'll arrange for you to be sent to a detox center. Porter knew that Ronnie's chances of a full recovery and return to normal life were slim. Too many years of addiction, too little support from society, too few resources from social services. But it was worth a try. An hour later, Ronnie James walked out the front door of the police station a free man. He had no home, no steady job, no family or friends who could help him. In the pocket of his old jeans was $20 given to him by a sympathetic officer on duty and a business card for a rehabilitation center. Porter watched him from the station window and thought about how justice is a relative and complex concept. Sarah Mueller's killers will be punished, but not as severely as if it had been a premeditated crime. Ronnie James was formally acquitted and released, but his life would not be radically better for it. And Sarah Mueller was dead, and no sentence would bring her back to life or comfort her parents in faraway Toronto.